Lovely to see you all tonight. Thank you for coming out on such a miserable evening. You've all done really well to get here. I was hoping I might get away with just 10 people, but it's lovely to see you all. So yeah, I'm Kate Martin. I'm a part-time senior gardener. I've been at Abbotsford for about 3 years now, 3 seasons. And I do the walled garden, so I'll talk to you a little bit about the estate. But my remit really is in the walled garden. And I'm going to tell you what we do for the wildlife in the garden and a little bit on the estate. But just before I start, could I have a show of hands of people who are also gardeners, just so I know? Oh, that's lovely. So some of the stuff, yes, you are. So some of the stuff I'll say, maybe it'll give you some tips, maybe it'll give you some hints. Hopefully it'll be interesting to you, and thank you everybody else for coming along as well. So. It's not very. Oh, can we leave? Yeah.
What went on?
Yes, please. I know, I don't know if it's gone to sleep. We're going to have a few technical issues tonight. I'm sorry about this. There we go. Yeah, have we got it?
Yeah.
Okay. So, Abbotsford, the home of Walter Scott. It's on the Tweed, between Gala and Melrose, and it's now run as a trust since 2007, because that was when the last ladies who were living in the house died and there were nobody else to take it on. So a trust was formed to preserve the house, to preserve the grounds, and to spread knowledge about Walter Scott as far wide as possible. So they do really well with that. We've got, I think, there's an online course at Aberdeen University. We've got lots of connections with people in the States. We've got lots of connections with people in Edinburgh. So yes, we're doing quite well at getting his message out there and speaking to people about him. And in return, people come and visit the house, which is lovely. So, as I said, Walter Scott, born in 1771, died in 1832. Most people know him as a novelist, a poet and a historian. He wrote 32 books, at least, some of them really well known. I don't know if you remember the film of Ivanhoe. I think it had Anthony Andrews in it. Somebody blonde, anyway. He was in it. I definitely remember Rod Roy. He had Liam Neeson in it. That was good. Most of the ladies will remember that. There were other novels, Waverley novels, 14 poems, and he wrote quite a lot of historical texts as well. He was a lawyer. We have links to the Faculty of Advocates, and we look after some of their papers down at Abbotsford, so that's an ongoing project for us. He was also a clerk of session in Selkirk Sheriff Court, and this was the end of the lowland clearances, so he was very aware of people leaving the borders to go to America and what happened to them, and he had lots of links. There's a great story about Irvin Washington Irvin, who was a trainee lawyer. He came across, didn't he?
Yes,
Stayed for 3 weeks, and we've got a big stone bull that he gave us, which sits on top of the walls in the garden. So, as well as being a lawyer, he was a naturalist. He loved tree planting. He loved being outside. He'd been ill when he was younger, and the way he got better was by spending a lot of time in nature. So he just enjoyed being outside and being out and about. The way he styled the garden is more in a picturesque landscape. This is coming off the back of Capability Brown, who was doing big sweeping lawns, little stands of trees, serpentine lakes. He was doing that in the late 1700s. And there was a reaction against that because it decided it was a bit too formulaic and people were getting a bit bored of that. So it swung the other way to a style which was called sublime, and the idea behind sublime was it was shocking and horror, and it was astonishing. It was huge rockeries, it was big cascades of waterfalls and things like that. And the picturesque kind of sat in the middle, so it was a little bit of one, a little bit of the other. There was a nice foreground. It wasn't the sweeping lawns, but it was. They liked the vernacular. They liked to be able to identify which part of the country you could be in, because you could see the vegetation, and you could see the native trees, and you can see what was going on. So that was the style he's tried to bring to the estate and around the garden. And he was also an innovator because at the time, there were a lot of glass houses, and they were the plants were very, very precious. They were bringing them across from America, all sorts of places, and they had to keep them warm. So there was steam heating, there was hot air heating, and he built a walled garden, and we can see they've got double skins at the top of the walled garden, so he could fit either, lots of people did this, but there was hot air which could flow from furnaces under the ground between the two walls and keep all the plants warm. And Walter Scott did his with steam heating. But interestingly, because the plants were so precious, this is where the technology was developed. And then a bit like Formula One and a bit like space and exploration now, that's where the technology was developed, and then it was taken into the house. So he started heating his greenhouse, and then he decided it'd be really nice to keep cosy himself. So he took it into the house after that. So this is the estate. Here's a picture from the river. He bought it as Cartley Hole Farm. You can see up here, 1,200 acres in 1811. Didn't like the name. Changed it after a nearby Pilgrim's Crossing where the monks were going across to Melrose Abbey. That's how it became Abbotsford. And as the money came in from his writings, he invested in more and more and more land. So he got up to 1,400 acres by 1832. But he didn't want to farm it. He'd seen that. He'd seen all the clearances. He didn't like that. He wanted to plant trees. He wanted to make it natural. He put as many trees as he possibly could and just enjoyed being out and about in nature. So now, with the trust, we're back down to about 110 acres. The river that flows in front of the house is part of the Tweed Conservation Area. So we have responsibilities about looking after the vegetation, keeping the river clear, trying to provide habitat for some of the small birds. And there was a new management plan in 2017 from the Scottish Forestry Commission. You can see up there, we rejuvenated the legacy woodlands by thinning them, opening them out, making sure some of the original Scots trees, which we've still got, were healthy and could get light and everything they needed, and we replanted a bit. There's the perennial problem of Rhododendron ponticum. Is anyone part of Border Forest Trust? Because I'm sure you do lots of Rhododendron ponticum clearing. Yeah? Do you know the story of Rhododendron ponticum? So when the vigorous rhododendrons came in from America around about this time, the Victorians crossed the Chinese rhododendrons with the American rhododendrons to give them a super vigorous hybrid because they wanted game cover for their pheasant shootings. And then they went out and they planted it all over their estates. And it really is a very vigorous hybrid because now it's taking over and all you poor Border Forest Trust people have to go dig it up and settle it down. So that's the Victorians for you. And we put in, well, we've got one other volunteer at the back. He was part of the team that put in all the all-weather paths. So we've got those, they're free to use. It's lovely to have people coming around the estate and enjoying woodland, walking their dogs and just being out and about in nature. So thank you very much for the paths over there. And also, just to the right of the house, there's a couple of acres which are part of the Tweed Pollinator Corridor. So that's 7, I think, sites up the Tweed. And they've been planted as a pollinator corridor to try and help insects move all the way up the Tweed and provide them with extra feed sites and places to rest. I think Floors has got some. I know Melliston was talking about doing it. I can't remember off the top of my head where the other ones were. Anyway, right. So this is the wildlife we've got. We've got some great wildlife volunteers who have been out doing a baseline survey. They've been looking at everything that we've got on the estate. They've been using trail cams, they've been out looking at tracks, following everything around, trying to find out what we can see. So we've got barn owls, they've just come back for the year. They've raised a couple of broods already, it's nice to have them back. We've got the pine martins at the bottom. They're lovely. You can only coax them in from next door. They're really not very easy to get hold of. It's not like you can go and get a breeding pair and release them. You have to wait for them to come. And they're lovely because as they run around the estate, they eat the grey squirrels. The grey squirrels are quite fat. You know about the grey squirrels, don't they? They sit on the ground as well, and the pine martins can get them, which then releases the territory up, and the red squirrels can move in because normally the red squirrels are outcompeted by the grey squirrels, but when the numbers are monitored by the pine marten, the red squirrels can come in. We do have lots of birds. This is a picture of a nuthatch. This is the latest arrival. Again, our bird selection is monitored. And we're thinking about ways we can bring more habitat and more feed and stuff into the garden. And then the last thing, we've got butterflies. We also have a mothman. He comes out once a month in the summer just to track the number of moths we have. So we had a moth talk here 2 months ago, didn't we? It was a November talk. Did he tell us how he did? Because you bring the light and you collect them. So yeah, we have all of that. So that's all that's happening outside the garden.
Could I ask you about the pine martens? I don't know much about wildlife. So a pine marten will eat a grey squirrel. Why won't he eat a red squirrel?
Because the grey squirrels are little fat things. They come down onto the ground to feed. And the pine marten can track them down on the ground, or he can run along the branches. But the red squirrels, because they're smaller, they can go on the flexible branches, which the pine martens can't get on. They're too heavy.
I'm sure it wasn't because he knew the difference between the two.
Yes, I thought I won't take that one. No, it's just because the grey ones are slower and fatter. So here's the garden. There's 3 main parts of the garden. You can see the south court. So that's a Regency kind of style. It's very formal, it's very simple. We've got the fountain in front of the house, we've got the topiary. It's very calm, it's just a nice entrance to the house. Next to that, we've got the Morris garden. This is where the original kitchen garden was. The grass you can see was originally in rectangles in a 4 square, but that garden is actually, it catches quite a lot of frost. It's not a good place to be growing veg. So, as the money came in, Walter Scott built another walled garden further up the hill, which is the new kitchen garden, which we just refer to as the walled garden. That again is in 4 squares. The 2 top beds either side of the pavilion are used for veg. The bottom left one is used for soft fruit, and the one on the bottom right is just a meadow. So we try and get more pollinators in that way. We've cut it really short this year, so we're hoping we'll get some different vegetation in there. And there's the pavilion. And the wall you can see at the top is the double-skinned one, which you kept warm with all the steam and everything. So, things that I've been doing in the garden this year, which is slightly new, I'll go through these one by one in a minute. So, we've tried to use no dig, we've looked at the composting, we've created habitat piles, we have tried to encourage pollinators by different selections of flowers. We're trying to leave the borders standing instead of cutting everything down. That's a new thing. We're also trying to keep the soil covered with whatever we can, and then encouraging the predators, like I was saying. So, the no dig, this has been around for a while. Don't know, people with allotments, are you doing no dig? Yeah? It's getting quite run of the mill now. So the reasons for no dig, it's much better for the soil structure. There's a lot of roots that grow through the soil. There's mycorrhiza, which people are talking about now. There's tunnels which have been created by the earthworms, which let air and water percolate down through the soil. So actually, if you don't disturb the soil, you have loads and loads of benefits. And also the mycorrhiza which grow through the soil, which is kind of like a mushroom network. I don't know if people have been hearing about that. But what that'll do is it'll soak up minerals and it'll soak up water, and it kind of forms a symbiotic relationship with the plant roots. So it passes the water and the nutrients up to the plants, which grow better, and then as the plants photosynthesize, they pass sugars back down to the mycorrhiza, which gives them the food that they need. So when all that's going on in the soil and it hasn't been disturbed, the plants grow better, the underground stuff grows better. And the other thing about no dig is that all the carbon from all the old dead roots and all the decomposed material stays in the soil. So it's a really good store of carbon. As soon as you start digging your soil, all that decomposing matter oxidizes and it turns into carbon dioxide and it moves out of the soil. So some of the advantages of growing green manure are that you increase the amount of roots that stay in the ground, and that holds the carbon dioxide under the soil. So we did it last year. We put 2 inches of compost on the beds, didn't we? You were the ones, you were shoveling it, weren't you, a couple of years ago? Yes. You'll be pleased to hear it's down to 1/2 inch now, because we filled the beds up really well to start with. and now it's just half an inch, and that was done this week. I haven't seen what it looks like. I'll find out when I go in tomorrow. So that's the no dig. You can see this picture at the top. That's kind of a picture of how the mycorrhiza and everything interacts. So the next thing is the composting. These bays were very kindly built for us by the college students. We try and use them as much as we can. We just take the green waste from the garden, we mix it through with the leaves. So the thing about composting, the compost that we put on the no-dig beds, because there was such a large amount that we needed, we got it from the council green waste site. And the thing is with that, because they have to sell it to us, they have to sterilise it. So it's heated up to 80 degrees or so. All the organisms, all the bacteria, all the life in that compost is completely annihilated. So although we are putting organic matter on the garden, we're not putting any life back into the garden. Whereas our compost, it cooks at about 60 degrees. It's still got loads of stuff in it. And it's really interesting. On some of the beds where we butted up the council green waste and our compost, you can definitely see the difference. The plants are a lot happier when they've got all of our extra bugs in there. It really helps them kick off and be healthy. So I'm sure you all know about composting, about mixing everything up. One of the tricks we do is we've got an old hedge trimmer, and we try and chop up all our green stuff as small as possible, because the smaller it is, the bigger the surface area, the faster it rots down and the easier it is to make compost. So I don't know if anybody's got a spare hedge trimmer that might help. These are habitat piles. This is a new thing. It's the idea is that anything you can't compost, keep in the garden, because decaying matter, decaying wood is good for invertebrates. It provides habitat, and it also provides nutrients. So the one at the bottom, I'm also very lucky because I get to spend part of my week up at the Botanics. I'm doing an HND horticulture up there, and this is when we were working in the garden. So they've made a habitat pile, and they've made it in the style of Andy Goldsworthy. Here's the top left, so that's a picture from Sheffield Sculpture Park. The Botanics has also got a sculpture from him, which is why they've started building all their habitat piles, like in the circles, in the same kind of style, as a passing reference to him. So I thought I would do the same thing. It doesn't look quite as smart. It's because I'm just beginning. By the time I've built a few more, hopefully it will do. But at the back of there, you can see just a normal habitat pile, just a pile of logs. But everything helps, keeping as much in the garden as you can for all the animals. Just helps bring as much life in as possible. What's the next one? Sorry, am I clicking away too much? Another initiative that we started this year is normally the borders are completely cut back in October, the garden's put to bed. Do you remember having to do that? Yeah. Strip everything out of the garden and put it on the compost heap. So this time what we've tried to do is keep everything, not touch it. There was a lot of negotiation going on, and I managed to get the garden standing until about a week ago, because we have to have it tidy for when we open at the beginning of March. But we managed to leave everything, and it's interesting how much bulk has disappeared from the garden over the winter. It's rotted. So actually, as we cut this down, it took a lot less to cut down. It was much, much quicker to cut down. It provided much less material at the end of the day. And also, when we did cut it down, we didn't scalp it right down to the ground. We left 15 centimetres, because the idea is then you've got a little cushion of warm air over the crown of the plants, so they don't struggle so much if it's frosty. But also you get a lot of invertebrates, and they snuggle into the crowns of the plants as well. And it was interesting, as we cut it down, the whole team were noticing that there were way more, 4 times probably, more ladybirds than we'd ever seen in the garden before, just because of all the extra leaf mould and habitat and stuff that we'd left around. We've also seen the birds coming for the seed heads and just flitting around the garden because there's more going on. So as well as trying to leave it standing, oh, I've gone too far, there we go. I'm trying to leave the soil covered. So we stopped weeding in about October, because anything with living roots keeps that mineral water transfer alive, and it gives the microorganisms in the soil something to live off. So the more stuff you can have in your soil over the winter, the better. So, like I say, I left the weeds. We tried to leave some of the veg. and the bits that we couldn't, we haven't really composted. Even the shores, actually, from the courgette, we left on the soil just to break up the compaction from having being rained on all the time. We just left whatever we could on the soil to protect it. So here are the beds after we did them. You can see there's quite a lot of green for this time of year. I know it's been mild, so we maybe haven't had as much frost, which would have killed everything down. But there's a lot that started growing again, and it's coming back. So I'm hoping it's worked, and the garden will kick off a bit quicker this year. That's what I'm thinking. And then the last, here are the predators. Here are the ladybirds, 4 times the amount of ladybirds we reckon. We've got the blue tits because one of our conservation volunteers has been brilliant about feeding them this year. He's been feeding them a lot more in the garden. Definitely noticed their presence around. And both of those will start picking off the aphids in the spring. So hopefully we'll need less pesticide. So trying to keep them in the garden is just good for the overall health of the garden. And then the organic matter that we put on the beds is feeding the worms. Again, I talked about the tunnels, which let the air and the water drain away. But also, as the worms digest the organic matter, and then they kind of spit it back out again, it's covered in slime, and it makes the soil particles stick together. And that's lovely because it means then there's extra spaces, extra water spaces, and extra air spaces in the soil, so the plant roots can actually grow and expand, and they're just happier in the soil, so it's just lovely having more of those in there. I think I'm talking really, really fast today because look, I've got to the what's next bit, which is where I was going to send you all off for a cup of tea. So if I stop there, is that okay? And we'll come back after tea. I'm just going to try and project to you right now. So if anybody doesn't hear at the back, please let me know. Okay. Oh, and I'll try not to blast too people. Okay, so I've talked about the things that I've done last year and the things that we've been thinking about, and then I'm going to tell you now about the things that I'm considering for this year, this summer, and maybe going forward. So, on the list, right plant, right place. That's a maxim that was made up by a lady called Beth Chatto. We're going to do a quick run through and then I'll do them in more detail. We're looking at refreshing the borders always. We're thinking about succession, so the length of the season, trying to match the most colour with the time when we've got the most visitors, and keep everything going right the way through. We had some comments that the borders were still looking good in October, and that's what we tried for. We tried to start the season and keep everything going all summer. We're looking at slightly different style around the front of the house, which I haven't shown you, is a place called the North Terrace, and that's between the house and the river. It connects really well to the countryside, which is beyond it. So I want to try and bring in more naturalistic plantings there, so it's a different style, it's more ecological, it's easier to maintain, and it's just a little bit more interesting opposed to the rest of the styles in the garden. And then the last thing I'm going to look at is some of the conservation efforts that we've got going on. So, first one, right plant, right place. Has anyone heard that before? Yeah? Oh, I'm telling you all stuff you know, I'm sorry.
No.
So, Beth Chatto made up this phrase in about the 1970s, and it was off the back of, there's been quite a few people who've been moving towards naturalism, like more naturalistic planting, because the Victorians were so into their bedding, they changed it all the time. It was so extravagant, it was so expensive on manpower and plants and materials. So someone called William Robinson, who was around in the late 1890s, he was pushing a more naturalistic style of gardening. He's got a lovely garden down south called Gravetie, which is a hotel now. But he was kind of the original one. So he was saying formal near the house, and then as you get away from the house, it should become less formal. So he had orchards and wildflower meadows. I think he was the first one to start thinking of those kind of phased return to nature as you went out through the garden. Following on from that, arts and crafts, they have a lot of naturalistic planting within quite a formal structure. So the style continued, and then a lot of the formal bedding was lost during the Second World War because there weren't the people to do it, there wasn't the money to do it, so a lot of the gardens got grassed over and then lots of them didn't come back again. But then Beth Chatto, she came back in because I think as a reaction, when people could get their hands on more bedding plants, there was a big, I want to grow this plant and I'm going to put it in my garden and I can give it the fertiliser, I can give it the right compost and I'll see how I go. And then Beth Chatto, like I say, she was suggesting that you think about the conditions that the plant likes and try and mimic those conditions, or you think about the conditions that you've got and then try and get a plant that likes those conditions. So there's less input and the plants have a better success rate. And the reason I'm telling you all of this is because when the garden was opened, we were really lucky. This is in about 2007. It was quite a tired garden. We had lots of donations. We were really, really lucky. So the garden is full and we built up the stock of plants and we put them in the gaps. So what I've been able to do this year is I've walked around the garden and I've been looking at microclimates. So at the top of the garden, just to the left of the pavilion, that's the southwest wall. It's really well drained, it's really sunny, it's a hot place to be. So we've actually got some almost bog plants up there, so you can kind of imagine. And then in the bottom corner, it's damper because it's at the bottom of the hill, it's cooler, and that would be the ideal place for bog plants. That's traditionally where we've been growing the dahlias. They come from Mexico. So this year, that's what I've been doing. I've been having a look at the kind of the plants that we've got, the profile of the plants that we have, what kind of conditions they like, and seeing if I can just move them around the borders to find a happy place for them, because happy plants are, they're just much better. So we've got the dahlias at the top. The dahlias are now in the top order. They were there this summer. They absolutely loved it. They will be there again. This plant, this pink plant here, that's got quite a big leaves, which is indicative of bog plants, and that's gone down to the cold corner at the bottom. And because I've got this beautiful hot Mexican kind of shape space at the top now, I can start growing all the hot plants, the hot gravelly plants that Beth Chatto had in her gravel garden. So we're going to experiment. We've already got fennel because we have it in the herb garden, but we're going to try and grow some more salvias. We're going to try and grow some tall verbascums. We're going to try some more plants for pollinators. So it's meaning we can push our boundaries as well. Always thinking that Walter Scott was an innovator and a naturalist. He would absolutely love the fact that we're stretching the plant range and we're trying to provide more food and habitat for pollinators at the same time. So that's one of the things that we're doing. The next thing is the refreshing the borders. So I was talking about the succession, and at the moment we do have quite a long season of interest. We start with tulips, then it goes to alliums, then it goes to peonies, then the roses and the sweet peas come in, and then the cosmos comes in, and then the dahlias come in, and the sunflowers and the Rebecchias, and we work really hard, and the roses, which are going right the way through the garden. We work really hard at feeding everything, deadheading everything, trying to keep it going until probably the first frosts. If we hit the end of September, we're all really pleased. We managed that last year, didn't we? We got there, we still had sweet peas in the garden. So that's what we're thinking of. That's for the flowers. But this year, like in the back end of last year, I managed to I grew some wallflowers and I put them in the garden. So we had flowers from the wallflowers in November. They died off a little bit over Christmas and they're back in flower now. This is February. We've got flowers in the garden now, so that's an experiment. So we keep trying to tweak it just to get more flowers out of the same space. Not just for the impression that it gives, so you come into the garden and there's colour and there's life, but also in case we get early pollinators. You sometimes, for a warm day, you get the bees waking up and there's nothing for them. So again, I'm trying to move bulbs around the garden and just find spaces for everything. And the picture at the bottom is the veg beds. I love the veg beds. Normally, what has been happening, and we moved away from it this year, we have one veg bed, we have one crop per veg bed. So if we have potatoes, we'd be growing main crop potatoes. They go in March. They'd sit in the ground till probably end of July, August. That's when we tend to harvest them, isn't it? Missed that allotment over there. And then the bed's just left, nothing. And then the same with the courgettes. So we just put something in March, it grows away for the summer, and then we abandon it, or we used to just clear the garden. So this year, what we tried to do, we used early potatoes. Volunteers love the Charlotte. Charlotte and Nicola, they're absolutely delicious. So they went in March, they were out by the end of June, beginning of July. And at that point, we timed our succession from the greenhouse. So we had brassicas ready to go straight into the ground. Literally in 2 days, we took the potatoes out, we put the brassicas in, they kept going. We had calibres coming off those brassica beds in October. We've left everything in the soil over the winter to protect the ground, keep the roots going, and our purple sprouted broccoli is just being harvested just now. With the 5-part rotation, that will be squash this year, so we're going to leave all the brassicas in the ground until we want to put the squash in, which will happen in May, which is when our last frost date should be around about that time. So from having 1 crop per bed, we've got maybe 3 crops over 2 years, so 1.5 anyway. Keeps the soil fed, keeps the soil covered, better for the volunteers, better for the wildlife. And I'm trying to replicate that across all the beds, because like I say, we've got a 5-part rotation, so we've got 10 beds. We've still got leeks standing, we've still got some of the brassicas standing. For the courgettes, when they went over, I left the shawls lying on the ground. Instead of clearing them all away and being tidy, I just left them on the ground, so they worked to protect the soil. And actually, when we lifted them last week before we mulched, the soil was in really nice condition. You could have planted straight into it if we'd had something that was ready to go out. So that's what we're trying to do with the veg: extend, get more crops, and pay more attention to the overwintering and the second half of the crops. That's very long, wasn't it? Sorry. So this is naturalistic planting. This again, it's not a new style, it's been around for a while, but it's based more on ecological principles because we're trying to replicate the 4 canopies that you find in a woodland. You normally have a ground cover layer, then you have a low herbaceous layer, then you have kind of a shrub or a flowering layer, and then you have a tree canopy layer. So by thinking about those layers, you can work out how you can slot different profiles of plants into the garden. And also the plants that you're looking to pick they're a different kind of profile to the ones you want in a walled garden. You want ones which don't want staking. You want ones which will stand over the winter and look really good. You want ones which are really good for insects, so they'll provide flowers or seeds or just general shelter. So that's a different way of selecting your plants, and then you, instead of big blocks, you kind of intermingle them. So it looks more like a lawn. It's a different style of border. So it's not going to look like this. This is just an idea. Okay, what else? What else was I going to tell you about this? And it should be good for the maintenance as well. This again will be ground on the north terrace in front of the house. So not in the main tidy bits of the garden, just more in the outside bits. That's a picture of the layers. You can see kind of we've got grass and ground cover at the bottom. Then we've got flowers which come up and down depending on the season. So you'll have early season, mid-season and then later season. And at the top we've got the trees. So round on the north terrace we've got some beautiful Philadelphus and we've got some Amelanchier. So those are the trees that are providing the top layer. And we've got the flowers in the middle. And it's not going to look exactly like that either, but this is what I'm aiming at. Okay, so instead of the big blocks, you have a more naturalistic distribution. You have the flowers that are in season drifting through the borders and intermingling with each other. And these as well, they're quite simple flowers. They're the daisy kinds or the spikes, which are really good for insects and really good for pollinators, all sorts of things. And there's also the ground cover which is good for invertebrates because it keeps them cool and it gives them somewhere to go where they're sheltered. So this is another idea. And then conservation. Here we go. I'm super lucky because Abbotsford is supporting me to be up at the Botanics doing an HND in horticulture, and while I'm up there I come across all sorts of ideas, hence the habitat pile, that came from up there as well. The other thing I've come across is the International Conifer Conservation Programme. I'm going to have to read some of these stats, I'm sorry, I can't remember them all. So there's 7 families of conifers with 615 species in them. And conifers, they're really important for the landscape because they're really long-lived. They provide a lot of habitat, they provide a lot of structure, and they tie the soil down. And they just steady the landscape because they don't change as much as the deciduous trees. But because they're so long-lived, about 1/3 of the species, they are the most threatened set of taxa, you know, the families.
Yes.
They're the most threatened, and they're threatened because they're susceptible to climate drying out, climate's getting wetter, climate's getting hotter, pathogens coming in, man interfering by logging, or tourists coming in and disturbing the vegetation. So there's lots of problems that they have. And to try and secure them, to try and preserve them, it's not always easy because we have the Millennium Seed Bank, which has got dried flower seeds. You know, it's down at Wakehurst, and they've got they keep stores of everything. But conifer seeds, they don't like being stored. They dry out too much and then they become unviable. They don't germinate. So the best way to conserve conifers is to have living specimens of them. So what they're trying to do, this is a bit long, isn't it? There's in situ conservation, so you look at where they're growing and you try and mitigate the threats. So if they're in an area which is drying, you try and plant some further north, or further south, obviously in the southern hemisphere. Or if it's getting too hot, you try and plant them further up a mountain, which would then give them a cooler environment. If it's a place that's flooding, try and find somewhere where it doesn't flood. So you're actually trying to preserve them where they are. That's in situ conservation. But the botanics is really good at trying to suggest ex situ conservation. So you find out where they're happy, and then you try and find another site which would do it for them. So we go around and they have a look. They've just taken on somebody else to look up, monitor all the collections. So they try and find a parallel area where they think these trees would survive, and it's big enough to have enough genetic diversity so that the trees remain viable. So the reason I'm telling you all of that is because we've managed to get somebody to come down and decide that Abbotsford would be a good place to come and have an ex situ conservation. So we've got a couple of these trees. Let me introduce to you. These are the 2 sets of trees we're going to have. We've got Brewer's spruce and we've got Schrenk's spruce. So they're going to be round the paths out in the woodlands. They'll have to have cages around them to protect them from the deer and to protect them from everything else. And it's not going to be lots. We maybe get 6 or 7 of each one. But at least it means we're doing our thing, and then maybe we can get some other varieties as well to try and help these conifers.
Excuse me, does money come with that then, Kate? Do you get some funding for that?
No,
Right.
we just have to look after them because we're lovely. But then we get the trees for free. So because it's an international programme, they're not allowed to make money from it, so they're not allowed to sell the conifers. But then they can't also pay us to look after them.
How big are they when you get them? Right.
So they're not going to, I'm hoping they're this big because they've got to come down in the back of my car.
Right.
Probably in 2 trips. We've got the cages, we know where they're going to come. And these are the ones left in the glass house at the end of the year. So I want to get them in before March. Hopefully we can get all the paperwork done and we can get them down and we can get them in. So please come and visit them.
Would you have had that opportunity, would Abbotsford have had that opportunity if you weren't working, if you weren't studying at the Botanics?
I think if Abbotsford had maybe got in touch with the botanics, they would have had the same, like Abbotsford's got the same criteria that it's a safe site and it's not going to be sold or logged or changed in any way. But maybe the profile wouldn't have been there. So some of it's the connections and some of it's what they actually are. So very pleased to tell you that we are conserving conifers. And then you'd be pleased to know we've got living lawns, we've got some meadows. We are trying to change the grass profile again to include more pollinators. We were very kindly given some yellow rattle. So the top right again is the meadow look that we're going for. It's got white clover, red clover, I think a knapweed in there, yellow rattle and some daisies. Hopefully we'll get, and an orchid. Hopefully we'll get all of those on the lawn which is on the north side, which is the one I was thinking for the naturalistic.
We went down to Where's We went down to Dryburgh Abbey, and when we spoke to Dryburgh Abbey, they were doing that, and they are very keen to work with a network of people, and I know that we gave them lots of ideas about who they should speak to. Can, if they haven't been in touch with you, can I suggest that you get in touch with them?
Of course. What I was hearing about again, what I was hearing about again, because I happen to be in a classroom, up at the Botanics, they are just putting together an online course on meadow management because they've got so many nature-based solutions. People up there, and they are trying to encourage pollinators. So that should be coming out in the next little while.
We were trying to encourage them to link up with all the different areas around here, so because they seem to be doing a lot of work that was almost in isolation, and they were very innovative and very smart with what they were doing.
Oh, it's always nice to hear what other people
We
are doing.
suggested very strongly that they started to do a bit of networking. In fact, we actually suggested that they hold an away day and invite everybody, including Abbotsford, along. So if they haven't been in touch with you, it might be somebody.
Oh yes, please get them to be in touch with me. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, you'll be pleased to know this is the last slide. So I'm going to stop now. I can leave it on this, or I can give you a blank one which says any questions. Let's have the flowers. Let's have the flowers. Is that all right? So thank you very much for listening. Please come and visit us. Come and see it in action. See how much we're getting on. We open again on the 1st of March. Yes, at the back.
I just wanted to use the veg in the restaurant.
So the restaurant is actually a franchise, so it's organised by someone else. We do put a little bit of stuff into the restaurant, but what I try and do is make sure my volunteers, who give us so much time and we couldn't do it without them, go home with a good selection of veg, and then I'll also try and get some of it into the office to try and encourage the office people to feel connected to the garden as well. And like compared to those two groups, I don't think it has as much impact in the cafe as it does with those two groups. So I do a little bit of that, but really I try and put it somewhere else.
That's good idea.
Are there any historical plans from Walter Scott's day that show planting that he would have used, and do you use them at all?
So I think we've got, I don't think we've got plans as such, but we have got plant lists. We've also, there's been quite a lot of research done on plants that are available at the same time, like cosmos and dahlias, they'd all come in. So we do bear those in mind, but again, I'm bearing in mind that Walter Scott was an innovator, I'm pushing, so it's my choice to push it a little bit more to see if we can get some different plants in the garden. But a lot of the, like the apple trees were original, the roses were original. There's a lot of the old stuff that is still there. New generations of it, but the same type of plants. Yes.
How many people do you mentioned volunteers? How many people to maintain what you're doing?
So the estate, as I said, is 110 acres.
Yeah.
We've got the head gardener, not me,
Yeah.
sadly, but thank you. There's 2 full-time colleagues who they do the grass cutting, the hedge cutting. Some of them help me in the garden. They do all the machinery, and then I'm there 3 days a week. And again, we couldn't do it without the volunteers. We have an estate gang who come in on Wednesdays. There's probably 6 of those. Then we have a Tuesday and a Thursday morning. People come in, probably 5 of those. We are looking for a few more volunteers on Tuesday morning if anybody
Well, I
would
was
like to come in
wondering
and
actually.
and some conservation volunteers maybe. So we are super lucky that we have all those people, and I don't take their work for granted at all because we couldn't do it without them. It wouldn't look anything like
No,
it
I think
does.
it's-
And we
I
have
think
the
it's
open day
great.
for recruiting on Saturday.
We do. Open day for recruiting on Saturday. Any more questions? Yes.
You're talking about succession planting with or flowering in the flower beds. Once a species starts to die down after flowering, do you actually remove those plants and replace them with the next set, or do you actually leave them all in place and just let nature take its course with it?
We grow quite a lot of annuals,
Mhm.
which we pop into the borders, so things like scabious. As they're annuals, we try and deadhead them as much as we can. And really, by the time the borders are so full, it's impractical to go on them and start pulling stuff out. So we just let the next kind of layer come over the top of them,
Right.
while trying to help them keep going as long as possible.
Yeah.
But the perennials and stuff, obviously, yeah, we deadhead those, we feed those, we really pamper those. So it's just the annuals that would come out anyway, and they just kind of...
Yeah.
Having said that, last year's annuals have just resurrected because they've been hidden in the vegetation that we've only just cut down. So hopefully we'll get more years out of each set of annuals as well.
Self-seeding.
Yeah? Come and have a look. Come and discuss
Oh, I
it
will.
with us.
I will.
We love talking about it, we really do. Any other questions?
It's not a question, it's just a statement really. I think it's really interesting what you're doing, and I think it seems to me to be a lovely carrying up forward of what Water Scott was about.
Yeah.
So
I use that as my argument to get away with murder, I think.
well done.
Thank you.
Well, thanks very much, Kate. Thanks. We are actually thinking